Stop giving your heart to someone who's only in love with the mirror. The most dangerous man in your life isn't always the loudest. Sometimes he's the one telling you exactly what you want to hear. Today, you're about to discover 7 warning signs that could save your confidence, your peace, and maybe even years of your life. If even one of these signs feels familiar, don't ignore it. I want you to stay with me until the very end, because the 7th sign is the one most people mistake for real love. And while you're listening, ask yourself one question: am I being loved or am I being controlled? You know what's dangerous? It's not always the man who yells. It's the man who smiles while slowly convincing you that your feelings don't matter. People think narcissism is about arrogance. No, it's about control. It's about making another person feel smaller so someone else can feel bigger. The first dangerous sign number 1, everything is about him. Every conversation somehow comes back to his achievements, his problems, his dreams, his pain. Your victories, they become background noise. A healthy relationship celebrates both people. A narcissistic relationship only has room for one star. And if you keep shrinking yourself just so someone else can shine, one day you'll wake up wondering where your own light went. Sign number 2, he never takes responsibility. Listen carefully. Everybody makes mistakes. Strong people admit them. Weak people hide from them. A narcissistic man has an excuse ready before you even finish explaining the problem. It's your fault. It's someone else's fault. It's bad timing. It's stress. Anything except accountability. Growth begins with ownership. Without accountability, there can never be real change. Sign number 3, he makes you doubt your own reality. This one destroys people from the inside. You remember exactly what happened. He says it never happened. You express your feelings. He tells you you're too emotional. You question his behavior. He convinces you that you're imagining things. Slowly, you stop trusting yourself. Never allow someone else's words to become louder than your own instincts. Your intuition exists for a reason. Respect it. Sign number 4. His love depends on your obedience. Real love doesn't disappear because you disagree. Real love doesn't punish you for having boundaries. A narcissistic man often rewards obedience and punishes independence. The moment you start saying no, his attitude changes, because he wasn't looking for a partner. He was looking for control. Never confuse control with commitment. They're not the same thing. Mid-video CTA, strict emotional CTA, 4 lines. If these words are opening your eyes, don't keep them to yourself. Someone you love may be silently living this nightmare. Share this message before another heart mistakes manipulation for love. And subscribe, because your peace of mind is worth protecting. Sign number 5. He cannot handle your success. Watch carefully. The people who truly love you celebrate your growth. A narcissistic man competes with it. Your promotion becomes his insecurity. Your confidence becomes his threat. Your happiness becomes something he tries to control. Never apologize for becoming the best version of yourself. The right people will clap for your progress, not compete against it. Sign number 6. He uses kindness as a transaction. He buys gifts but expects obedience. He helps you, then reminds you every chance he gets. Nothing is ever free. Every act of kindness comes with invisible strings attached. Love isn't a business deal. It isn't keeping score. Real love gives because it cares, not because it's collecting future favors. Sign number 7. He makes you feel like you must earn basic respect. This is the one that breaks millions of people. You work harder, love harder, forgive more, stay longer, hoping one day you'll finally become enough. But hear this clearly. Respect is not a reward. Respect is the minimum requirement. If someone constantly makes you prove your worth, the problem isn't your value. The problem is their inability to recognize it. Never spend your life auditioning for a role in someone else's heart. You were born valuable, not because someone chose you, because you already have worth. The strongest decision you'll ever make isn't choosing someone else. It's choosing yourself. Because once you know your value, manipulation loses its power. Control loses its grip. Fear loses its voice. And confidence finally returns home. So remember this, not everyone who says, I love you knows how to love. Pay attention to actions. Protect your peace. Guard your self-respect. And never let anyone convince you that accepting less is the price of being loved. Because the greatest relationship you'll ever build starts with refusing to abandon yourself. Charm can be one of the most attractive qualities a person possesses. A confident smile, a warm voice, thoughtful compliments, and the ability to make everyone in the room feel special can leave a lasting impression. That's why one of the greatest mistakes people make is believing that charm automatically reflects character. It doesn't. Charm is what people see. Character is who someone is when nobody is watching. Those two things are not always the same. And understanding that difference can protect you from years of emotional pain. Some of the most dangerous people you'll ever meet don't look dangerous at all. They don't introduce themselves with anger or disrespect. They don't walk into your life waving red flags. Instead, they arrive with kindness, confidence, generosity, and words that seem almost too perfect. They know exactly what to say. They know exactly how to make you feel important. They study your dreams, your fears, your insecurities, and your desires. They learn what makes you smile, and then they use that knowledge to gain your trust. At first, it feels like you finally met someone who truly understands you. But understanding someone and valuing someone are two completely different things. A narcissistic man often knows how to create a powerful first impression. He may shower you with compliments that make you feel like the most extraordinary person in the world. He may tell you that you're different from everyone he's ever met. He may act as though meeting you changed his entire life. It all feels exciting. It feels magical. It feels like the beginning of a love story you've always dreamed about. But here's the question you must ask yourself. Is he showing genuine interest in who you are? Or is he simply creating an image that keeps you emotionally attached? Real character doesn't need a performance. Character reveals itself through consistency. It shows up in honesty, respect, humility, patience, and accountability. It isn't measured by how someone treats you during the exciting beginning of a relationship. It's measured by how they treat you after the excitement fades, after disagreements happen, after life becomes difficult, and after they no longer feel the need to impress you. Anybody can be charming for a weekend. Anybody can act generous during the first few months. Anybody can say beautiful words when they're trying to win your attention. But not everyone can consistently show respect when they're frustrated. Not everyone can stay honest when lying would be easier. Not everyone can remain kind when they don't get their way. That's where true character begins to separate itself from empty charm. Think about this for a moment. A beautiful gift wrapped in expensive paper can still be empty inside. The wrapping may catch your attention, but eventually you have to open the box. The same is true with people. Charm is the wrapping paper. Character is what's inside. If you spend your life judging people by the wrapping, you'll eventually find yourself disappointed by what's hidden underneath. One of the most common mistakes people make is confusing confidence with emotional maturity. A narcissistic man often appears fearless. He speaks with certainty. He seems to have all the answers. He may even appear successful, admired, and respected by others. But confidence without humility can become arrogance. Strength without compassion becomes intimidation. Leadership without integrity becomes manipulation. Never allow someone's confidence to blind you to the way they actually treat people. Pay close attention to how a person treats those who cannot benefit them. Watch how they speak to waiters, cashiers, drivers, co-workers, family members, and strangers. Observe how they react when someone disagrees with them. Notice what happens when they don't get their way. That's where character speaks the loudest. Anyone can smile when life is easy. The true test of a person's heart is how they behave when life refuses to cooperate. A narcissistic man often depends on appearances because appearances are easier to control than genuine integrity. He wants admiration more than connection. He wants applause more than honesty. He wants people to believe he's a great man without doing the difficult work required to become one. That's why he invests so much energy into creating an impressive image. He understands that if people fall in love with the image, they may ignore the reality standing right in front of them. Never let compliments become a substitute for consistency. Never mistake expensive gifts for emotional security. Never confuse exciting conversations with genuine commitment. Words can be rehearsed. Promises can be manufactured. Apologies can be repeated. But consistent actions reveal the truth every single time. The strongest relationships are not built on impressive first impressions. They are built on trust that grows over time, respect that remains during conflict, honesty that survives uncomfortable conversations, and loyalty that doesn't disappear when circumstances change. That's what real character looks like. It isn't loud. It doesn't demand constant attention. It doesn't need to convince everyone that it's good. It simply proves itself day after day through actions that match its words. One of the clearest warning signs of a narcissistic man is his complete refusal to take responsibility for his actions. Everyone makes mistakes. Every human being says the wrong thing, makes poor decisions, or hurts someone without intending to. The difference between a healthy person and a narcissistic person is not whether they make mistakes. It is how they respond after those mistakes happen. A person with emotional maturity accepts responsibility, apologizes sincerely, learns from the experience, and works to do better. A narcissistic man, however, sees accountability as a threat to his ego. Instead of admitting fault, he will do almost anything to protect the image he has created of himself. At first, this behavior may seem small. Perhaps he arrives late and blames traffic, even though he left the house late. Maybe he forgets an important promise and insists you never told him about it. He may speak harshly during an argument and later claim that your attitude forced him to react that way. These moments may appear insignificant on their own, but over time, they form a pattern. The pattern reveals something much deeper than forgetfulness or stubbornness. It reveals a person who cannot face the truth about himself. A narcissistic man often believes that admitting a mistake makes him look weak. Instead of understanding that accountability builds trust, he believes it destroys authority. As a result, every disagreement becomes a battle that he must win. Every conversation turns into an opportunity to prove that someone else is responsible. Instead of solving problems together, he focuses all his energy on avoiding blame. One of the most common tactics he uses is shifting responsibility onto other people. If he loses his temper, he says you pushed him too far. If he breaks a promise, he says you expected too much. If he fails at work, he blames his coworkers. If friendships fall apart, he insists everyone else was jealous or dishonest. In his mind, he is almost always the victim of someone else's actions. This constant blame shifting allows him to protect his self-image while leaving everyone around him carrying the emotional weight of his behavior. Over time, this can become incredibly confusing for the people closest to him. You begin every difficult conversation hoping to find a solution, but somehow you always leave feeling guilty. You start questioning your own actions instead of examining his. You apologize simply to restore peace, even when you were not the one who caused the problem. Without realizing it, you begin accepting responsibility for issues that never belonged to you in the first place. Healthy relationships cannot survive without accountability because trust depends on honesty. When two people admit their mistakes, they create opportunities to learn, forgive, and grow together. But when one person refuses to acknowledge any wrongdoing, growth becomes impossible. Every conflict repeats itself because nothing is ever truly resolved. The same arguments return again and again, wearing down the relationship little by little. Pay attention to the way someone apologizes. A sincere apology accepts responsibility without excuses. It sounds like, I was wrong, I hurt you, I'm sorry, and I want to do better. A narcissistic apology often sounds very different. It may begin with, I'm sorry you feel that way, which avoids accepting any responsibility at all. Or perhaps, I'm sorry, but you made me angry, which immediately shifts the blame back onto you. Sometimes he apologizes only to end the conversation, with no intention of changing his behavior. An apology without changed behavior is not accountability. It is simply another form of manipulation. Another important warning sign is how he reacts when someone points out his mistakes. Constructive feedback is a normal part of life. Emotionally healthy people may not enjoy criticism, but they can listen, reflect, and improve. A narcissistic man often reacts with anger, defensiveness, or ridicule. He may attack your character instead of addressing the issue. He may bring up your past mistakes to distract from his own. He may accuse you of being too sensitive or impossible to please. Instead of discussing the problem, he turns the focus toward your flaws. This behavior creates an unhealthy cycle where honest communication becomes nearly impossible. You begin avoiding difficult conversations because you already know how they will end. Rather than feeling heard, you feel dismissed. Rather than finding understanding, you encounter resistance. Eventually, silence replaces honesty because speaking up seems pointless. It is also important to recognize that accountability is one of the greatest signs of inner strength. It takes courage to admit when you are wrong. It takes confidence to acknowledge your weaknesses and commit to improving them. People who are secure in themselves understand that making mistakes does not define their worth. They know that growth comes through humility. A narcissistic man often lacks this humility because his identity depends on appearing flawless. He would rather protect his pride than protect the relationship. Never allow someone else's refusal to accept responsibility to convince you that everything is your fault. Relationships require effort from both people. Problems are solved through mutual honesty, not one-sided guilt. If you find yourself constantly apologizing while the other person rarely admits any wrongdoing, stop and examine the pattern instead of accepting the blame. Remember this truth. Excuses may protect someone's ego for a moment, but they destroy trust over time. Blame may help someone escape responsibility today, but it prevents real growth tomorrow. Strong people are not those who never fail. Strong people are those who face their failures with honesty, learn from them with humility, and become better because of them. When someone's words are always filled with excuses and their actions never change, believe the pattern instead of the promises. A person who refuses to take responsibility for their actions will eventually expect you to carry the burden of every mistake, every conflict, and every disappointment. Protect your peace by recognizing that true character is not revealed by perfection. It is revealed by the courage to admit when you are wrong and the determination to make things right. One of the most painful experiences a person can go through is realizing that someone has been using emotions as a weapon instead of a bridge to build trust. Emotional manipulation is one of the strongest tools a narcissistic man uses because it doesn't leave visible scars, yet it can slowly destroy confidence, self-worth, and peace of mind. Unlike physical control, emotional manipulation often happens so subtly that the victim doesn't even realize it's happening until they begin questioning their own judgment. That is exactly why it is so dangerous. It changes the way you think about yourself before you ever recognize what is taking place. A healthy relationship is built on honesty, understanding, and mutual respect. Both people feel safe expressing their thoughts, fears, and emotions without worrying that those feelings will be used against them later. In a narcissistic relationship, however, emotions become opportunities for control. Instead of listening to understand, he listens to gain information he can later use to influence your decisions, weaken your confidence, or make you doubt yourself. One of the most common forms of emotional manipulation is gaslighting. This is when someone repeatedly causes you to question your own memory, perception, or understanding of reality. Imagine clearly remembering a conversation, only to have someone confidently insist that it never happened. You know what you heard. You know what you saw. Yet he looks you in the eyes and says, "You're imagining things." At first, you may argue because you're certain of the truth. But after hearing those words over and over again, you begin wondering if your memory really is unreliable. Eventually, you stop trusting yourself and start relying on him to define reality for you. That is exactly the outcome he wants. Gaslighting is especially destructive because it attacks your confidence from within. It doesn't simply change your opinion about one situation. It changes your opinion about yourself. You begin second guessing your instincts, your feelings, and your ability to make good decisions. A person who no longer trusts themselves becomes much easier to control. Another powerful tactic is guilt tripping. A narcissistic man often makes you feel responsible for his emotions, his happiness, and even his failures. If you spend time with your family, he acts disappointed. If you focus on your career, he accuses you of not caring enough about the relationship. If you say no to one of his requests, he behaves as though you've deeply hurt him. Suddenly, you're carrying guilt for simply living your own life. You begin making decisions based on avoiding his disappointment instead of honoring your own values. Real love never forces you to feel guilty for having healthy boundaries. It encourages you to grow as an individual while supporting the relationship. Manipulation, however, convinces you that taking care of yourself is selfish. It teaches you that your needs should always come second. Over time, this constant guilt drains your emotional energy until pleasing him becomes your highest priority. Another warning sign is the silent treatment. Healthy couples sometimes need space to calm down after an argument. That is normal and respectful when both people communicate their need for time. The silent treatment used by a narcissistic man is very different. It is not about finding peace. It is about creating punishment. He suddenly withdraws affection, conversation, attention, and emotional connection without explanation. He knows that the silence creates anxiety. He understands that you'll likely begin wondering what you did wrong. Eventually, you may apologize just to end the emotional distance, even if you were never at fault. Silence becomes a form of control because it teaches you that disagreement may result in emotional abandonment. Instead of expressing yourself honestly, you begin walking on eggshells, afraid that one wrong word will lead to another period of rejection. That is not love. That is emotional conditioning. A narcissistic man may also alternate between affection and cruelty in ways that leave you emotionally confused. One day he praises you, making you feel deeply loved and appreciated. The next day he criticizes you, ignores you, or makes you feel worthless. This unpredictable cycle creates emotional dependence because you constantly chase the return of the kind, affectionate version of him. You begin believing that if you just try harder, become more patient, or avoid making mistakes, the loving version will stay. But the cycle continues because inconsistency itself becomes another tool of manipulation. Pay close attention to how someone reacts when you express your emotions. A caring partner listens, even when they disagree. They may not always have the perfect response, but they respect your right to feel what you feel. A narcissistic man often dismisses your emotions altogether. He tells you that you're too sensitive, too dramatic, or overreacting. Instead of addressing your concerns, he attacks the way you express them. This causes you to suppress your feelings until you no longer believe they matter. The longer emotional manipulation continues, the smaller your world becomes. You stop trusting your judgment. You stop speaking your truth. You stop believing your own instincts. You become more concerned with keeping the peace than protecting your self-respect. Without realizing it, you slowly surrender the confidence that once defined who you were. Never forget this truth. Your emotions are not weaknesses. They are signals that deserve attention and respect. A healthy relationship makes you feel heard, valued, and emotionally safe. It allows disagreements without humiliation, honesty without fear, and vulnerability without punishment. If someone repeatedly makes you question your reality, carries your guilt as though it belongs to you, or uses silence and confusion to gain control, recognize those patterns for what they are. Love should bring clarity, not constant confusion. It should strengthen your confidence, not weaken it. The right person will never manipulate your heart to gain power over your mind. They will protect your trust, honor your feelings, and remind you that your voice deserves to be heard just as much as theirs. When you learn to recognize emotional manipulation, you take back something priceless, your ability to trust yourself again. And once you trust yourself, it becomes much harder for anyone to control your future. The greatest defense against a narcissistic man is not becoming tougher, colder, or more suspicious of everyone you meet. Your greatest defense is protecting your self-worth. When you know your value, manipulation becomes much harder to accept. When you respect yourself, you stop chasing people who constantly make you feel like you're not enough. That is why protecting your self-worth is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of wisdom. It is the foundation of every healthy relationship you will ever build. Many people enter relationships believing that love alone can fix everything. They think enough patience can change bad behavior. They believe enough sacrifice can earn respect. They convince themselves that if they just become a little more understanding, a little more forgiving, or a little more accommodating, the relationship will eventually become healthy. But love without self-respect is dangerous because it teaches you to ignore the very warning signs that were meant to protect you. A narcissistic man often looks for people who are compassionate, loyal, forgiving, and willing to see the best in others. These are beautiful qualities. They are strengths, not weaknesses. The problem arises when those strengths exist without healthy boundaries. Compassion without boundaries becomes exploitation. Loyalty without wisdom becomes emotional captivity. Forgiveness without accountability becomes permission for repeated harm. Protecting your self-worth means understanding that kindness should never require you to abandon yourself. Your self-worth is not determined by someone's opinion of you. It is not measured by how much attention you receive, how many compliments someone gives you, or whether another person chooses to stay in your life. Your value existed before anyone met you, and it will continue to exist regardless of who walks away. One of the greatest mistakes people make is allowing someone else's treatment to become the definition of their identity. Just because someone fails to appreciate your value does not mean your value has disappeared. A narcissistic man often works to slowly weaken your confidence because confident people are much harder to control. If you believe you deserve respect, you are less likely to tolerate disrespect. If you trust your own judgment, manipulation becomes less effective. If you know your worth, empty promises lose their power. That is why emotional manipulation frequently begins with small attacks on your confidence. He may criticize your appearance, question your intelligence, dismiss your dreams, or compare you to others. Each comment may seem insignificant by itself, but repeated often enough, those words begin to shape the way you see yourself. The danger is not just hearing those negative messages. The danger is believing them. Once you begin doubting your own worth, you start accepting treatment you would have rejected in the past. You tolerate disrespect because you no longer believe you deserve better. You remain silent because you fear losing the relationship. You apologize for things that were never your fault because keeping the peace feels more important than protecting your dignity. That is why recognizing the warning signs early is so important. Red flags are not invitations to prove your love. They are opportunities to protect your future. Many people ignore those early signs because they become emotionally attached to the person's potential rather than accepting their present behavior. They say, maybe he'll change. Maybe he's just stressed. Maybe things will get better. Hope is a beautiful quality, but hope should never replace wisdom. Believe consistent actions more than repeated promises. One of the strongest signs of healthy self-worth is the ability to set boundaries without feeling guilty. Boundaries are not punishments. They are expressions of self-respect. They communicate what behavior you will accept and what behavior you will not. A healthy person may not always agree with your boundaries, but they will respect them. A narcissistic man often reacts very differently. He may become angry, accuse you of being selfish, or attempt to make you feel guilty for protecting yourself. Remember this: people who benefit from your lack of boundaries are often the first to complain when you create them. Protecting your self-worth also means learning to trust your intuition. There are moments when something inside you quietly says, this doesn't feel right. Too often, people ignore that inner voice because they fear being judged, rejected, or alone. But your instincts exist for a reason. They are not always perfect, but they deserve to be heard. If someone's words consistently contradict their actions, pay attention. If you constantly feel anxious, confused, or emotionally exhausted after spending time with someone, don't dismiss those feelings. Your emotional well-being is trying to tell you something important. Another essential part of self-worth is understanding that being alone is healthier than remaining in a relationship that destroys your peace. Loneliness may feel uncomfortable for a season, but losing your confidence can affect every area of your life for years. Never believe that staying in a harmful relationship is better than starting over. The right relationship should add to your life, not slowly take pieces of you away. Surround yourself with people who remind you of your value instead of making you question it. Listen to those who encourage your growth, celebrate your successes, and tell you the truth with kindness. Healthy relationships inspire confidence rather than fear. They create peace instead of constant anxiety. They allow you to be your authentic self without feeling that you must earn basic respect. Never forget this powerful truth. You do not have to convince the right people to see your worth. Those who genuinely care about you will recognize your value without asking you to sacrifice your dignity. Protect your confidence, guard your peace, and never lower your standards simply because someone refuses to meet them. The earlier you recognize unhealthy patterns, the sooner you can choose a different path. Your heart deserves honesty. Your mind deserves peace. Your voice deserves to be heard. And your life is far too valuable to spend trying to earn love from someone who only values control. The moment you truly believe in your own worth is the moment manipulation begins to lose its power. That is where freedom begins, and that is where the strongest version of you is born.